In late 2025, Israel's recognition of Somaliland as a sovereign nation sent shockwaves through Africa and the Middle East. The announcement was celebrated in Hargeisa but condemned by much of the world, especially Qatar, which called it a violation of international law and Somalia's territorial integrity. This move shattered decades of diplomatic precedent, forcing nations to take sides on the issue of Somaliland's statehood and the sanctity of national borders. For over 30 years, Somaliland has operated as a de facto state, but Israel's recognition has ignited a fierce international debate. The fallout is already reshaping alliances and creating new diplomatic fault lines. Qatar's firm rejection has set the stage for a global confrontation over sovereignty versus self-determination. The stakes are high, and the world is watching as the crisis unfolds. To grasp the crisis, we must understand Somaliland's unique history. Once a British protectorate, Somaliland briefly gained independence in 1960 before uniting with Somalia, a union that quickly soured. Marginalization and brutal repression under Siad Barre's regime led to civil war and devastation in the north. In 1991, Somaliland declared independence, building a stable democratic state while the rest of Somalia descended into chaos. Despite functioning as a sovereign nation, with its own government, military and currency, Somaliland remains unrecognized internationally. This lack of recognition blocks access to global institutions and investment, stifling development. Israel's move was seen in Hargeisa as a long-awaited breakthrough, but for Somaliland, recognition is about survival, not just pride. Israel's recognition of Somaliland was a calculated move, driven by strategic and economic interests. The Horn of Africa's location near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is vital for global trade and Israeli security. By partnering with Somaliland, Israel gains a foothold in a region where rivals like Iran are active. The move also fits Israel's strategy of building alliances beyond the Arab world and could open economic opportunities in Somaliland's untapped markets. But Israel knew this would provoke backlash from Somalia, the Arab League, and the African Union. It's a high-stakes gamble that has already raised regional tensions. Qatar's response was swift and unequivocal. Doha condemned Israel's recognition as a dangerous precedent undermining Somalia's sovereignty and international law. Qatar has long supported Somalia's government, seeing any recognition of Somaliland as destabilizing. Doha warned that such moves could reignite conflict and encourage other secessionist movements across Africa. Qatar framed its opposition as a defense of global order, insisting that borders cannot be redrawn unilaterally. The statement also linked the crisis to unresolved Middle East conflicts, urging Israel to focus on peace at home. Qatar now leads a diplomatic push to rally opposition against Israel's move. Qatar's condemnation quickly galvanized a global response. A coalition of Arab, African and Islamic nations, along with major organizations like the Arab League and African Union, denounced Israel's action. The AU warned that recognizing Somaliland could trigger secessionist crises across Africa. The EU and China reaffirmed support for Somalia's territorial integrity, while the US remained cautious. This overwhelming opposition has left Israel and Somaliland isolated. For Hargeisa, the recognition is bittersweet, historic, but at the cost of alienating key regional players. True statehood, as the backlash shows, requires broad international acceptance. The debate over Somaliland's recognition is sharply divided. Supporters argue Somaliland's history, stability, and democracy merit recognition, and that it could be a bulwark against regional chaos. They say denying recognition punishes success and ignores the will of Somaliland's people. Opponents, led by Qatar and the AU, warn that unilateral recognition undermines sovereignty and could spark a wave of secessionist conflicts. They fear it would destabilize Somalia and set a dangerous global precedent. The AU insists any change must come through negotiation, not outside intervention. The world remains split between the principles of self-determination and territorial integrity. Israel's move has far-reaching geopolitical consequences. It risks escalating tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia, which has interests in Somaliland's ports. Extremist groups like Al-Shabaab have seized on the crisis, threatening violence against any Israeli presence. The move could trigger proxy struggles in the Horn of Africa, with Middle Eastern powers backing rival sides. Globally, secessionist movements are watching closely, hoping for a precedent. The AU and others fear this could unravel the post-colonial order and spark instability worldwide. The crisis is now a test of the international system's ability to manage competing claims for statehood. Somalia and Somaliland's reactions reveal their deep divide. Mogadishu condemned Israel's move as a violation of sovereignty and rallied support from allies like Qatar and the AU. The decision has fueled Somali nationalism and hardened opposition to Somaliland's secession. In Hargeisa, the announcement sparked celebrations, seen as long overdue validation of their independence. Somaliland's president quickly embraced the new partnership with Israel, but anxiety lingers over the international backlash. Rumors of controversial deals, such as resettling displaced Palestinians, have added to the tension. Somaliland now faces the challenge of turning symbolic recognition into broader acceptance. Both sides are bracing for a prolonged diplomatic and political struggle. The future of the Horn of Africa is more uncertain than ever. Israel's move may remain isolated, as powerful blocs like Qatar, the Arab League, and AU work to contain its impact. The crisis is redrawing alliances, with new camps forming around Somalia and Somaliland. The Red Sea corridor stability now hangs in the balance as regional powers vie for influence. Dialogue between Mogadishu and Hargeisa seems unlikely in the near term, with both sides hardening their positions. The international community faces a stark choice: uphold existing borders or reconsider the rules of statehood. For now, the world watches, hoping for restraint as a new chapter in the region's history begins. As diplomatic tensions escalate between Qatar, Israel, and Somaliland, international mediators are stepping into the spotlight. The United Nations, the African Union, and the Arab League have all called for urgent dialogue, warning that unchecked rivalry could destabilize the entire Horn of Africa. The UN Secretary-General has urged all parties to exercise maximum restraint and offered to facilitate talks, emphasizing the need for peaceful solutions over unilateral actions. Meanwhile, the African Union, deeply invested in the continent's stability, has dispatched special envoys to both Mogadishu and Hargeisa, hoping to bridge divides before they become irreparable. The Arab League, backing Somalia's sovereignty, has convened emergency sessions, rallying member states to present a united front against what it calls illegal recognition of Somaliland. Yet some voices within the League quietly advocate for compromise, recognizing the risks of prolonged isolation and conflict. Despite these efforts, progress is slow. Deep mistrust and competing interests make mediation a daunting challenge. However, diplomatic channels remain open, and behind closed doors, negotiators continue their delicate dance, searching for common ground that might avert a wider crisis. In a region where history is shaped as much by dialogue as by confrontation, the world now waits to see if international mediation can chart a path toward peace, or if old grievances will once again win the day. Beyond headlines and diplomatic maneuvering, the crisis in the Horn of Africa is sending shockwaves through the region's fragile economies. As political uncertainty grows, so does anxiety among investors, traders, and international donors. Trade routes, already vulnerable to piracy and regional disputes, now face heightened disruptions. Ports in Somaliland, vital gateways for goods entering East Africa, are caught in the crossfire of recognition disputes. Shipping companies weigh the risks of docking in contested waters, threatening to drive up costs and delay essential imports. Neighboring countries dependent on these trade corridors brace for shortages and price hikes. Foreign investment, a lifeline for infrastructure and job creation, is also at stake. Multinational firms, wary of instability, are putting projects on hold or canceling expansion plans altogether. The uncertainty clouds prospects for new deals, particularly in sectors like energy, logistics, and telecommunications, where long-term stability is crucial. Meanwhile, international aid, critical for millions facing food insecurity and drought, is caught in a web of political calculations. Donor nations and agencies must tread carefully, ensuring that assistance reaches those in need without fueling further division. Some aid flows risk being suspended or redirected, complicating humanitarian efforts at a time when the region can least afford it. For ordinary people, these economic tremors translate into real hardships: fewer jobs, rising prices, and shrinking opportunities. As the crisis deepens, the economic fallout threatens to entrench poverty and widen inequalities, making a resolution not just a diplomatic imperative, but an economic one as well. In the uncertain days ahead, the Horn of Africa's future may hinge as much on economic resilience and cooperation as on the outcomes of diplomatic negotiations. While political leaders debate and international headlines swirl, it is the everyday people of the Horn of Africa who bear the true weight of this crisis. In Somaliland, we meet Ayan, a market vendor whose stall once bustled with customers and fresh produce. Now, with trade slowed and prices soaring, she struggles to keep her business afloat and her family fed. Across the border in Somalia, Ahmed, a young university graduate, shares his frustration. His dreams of finding work in the expanding logistics sector have been dashed as foreign companies freeze hiring and projects stall. "We just want a chance," he says quietly, "but the world's politics have put our futures on hold." In Djibouti, truck driver Musa faces a new reality. Longer waits at checkpoints, unpredictable routes, and rising fuel costs. Each day on the road is now a gamble, as regional tensions threaten to spill over and disrupt the fragile peace that keeps trade moving. For Fatima, a mother of 4 in a rural Ethiopian border town, the crisis is felt most acutely at the dinner table. Her family relies on international food aid, but with shipments delayed and supplies uncertain, each meal is a reminder of the region's deepening vulnerabilities. These stories echo from city streets to remote villages, tales of resilience, anxiety, and hope. For millions, the crisis is not just about sovereignty or recognition, but about survival. As borders harden and opportunities fade, ordinary people are left to navigate the fallout, clinging to the hope that peace and stability will return. Their voices remind us, behind every headline, there are lives in the balance, waiting for the world to listen.